Hey there folks, I'm Mark, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard BREAKDOWN. I don't remember. This week does not feel as tumultuous as I was expecting. Yes, part of this is the result of so many album bombs hitting the Hot 100 in quick succession, which has meant that many of the dramatic gains and losses have had their impact blunted, but some of this also comes with expectations being met, not really exceeded. Yeah, The Weeknd did very well and had some considerable achievements, but I also saw the majority of it coming, and it's not like the album is so great that its mere presence elevates the Hot 100 to a new standard. Yes, replacing Lil Uzi Vert, of course, it's an upgrade, but again, I've seen better album bombs, even if I do think this is a pretty good week. Now, granted, this conversation does start on a high note thanks to our top 10, where, as I predicted, Blinding Lights by The Weeknd finally took the number one spot. It kept up the radio momentum, sales are really strong, and it finally got the on-demand streaming boost it needed. The big question is whether or not it's sustainable, and that is tough to say. Radio and sales are likely to hold up, but streaming is a slightly different question, which brings us to The Box by Roddy Ricch at number 2. Now, I predicted this would fall off for a couple of weeks now, but it still has radio momentum to spare, and frankly, disgusting amounts of YouTube, even if the sales have dropped back a little. What I'd argue is the more interesting conversation comes with Don't Start Now by Dua Lipa at number 3. It rules the radio, but not by a huge margin. And it seemed to hit a small peak there this week, and I'm just not sure that she's got the streaming saturation in order to beat out her competition. Case in point, on the back of the streaming, even as the radio is fading, Heartless by The Weeknd has surged back in the top 10 at number 4. I mean, I doubt it'll last, but that is still sizable that it made that run. Now all of it leaves Circles by Post Malone in a weird spot at number 5. It's losing in all categories, but has just enough inertia to stick around, which does not seem to be a luxury that Life is Good by Future featuring Drake has down at number 6. Again, YouTube streaming are pretty huge, but the radio is tanking, and I'm not sure it's going to stick around much longer. Now this takes us to Adore You by Harry Styles holding at number 7, which is really just here on the radio surge. That'll protect it from the album bombs. And sadly, that's also the case for Intentions by Justin Bieber featuring Quavo at number 8. Except overall, it's just got more traction across the board. Fantastic. Then, making her unfortunately tepid entry into the top 10, Say So by Doja Cat's at number 9. Pretty consistent across the board. It's probably going to stick around. And finally, Roxanne by Arizona Zervis stumbling down to number 10, which is just not surprising as this is tanking across the board. And on that note, our losers and dropouts. And really, the only one that's worth talking about is Good as Hell by Lizzo clinching her year-end spot. Because while I still kinda like I Wish Grandpas Never Die by Riley Green, it was never gonna make a serious run, as has also been the case for We Back by Jason Aldean and Futsal Shuffle 2020 by Lil Uzi Vert, which also fell off. Now this takes us to our losers, most of which are album bomb collapses, so let's start off with Lil Uzi Vert again. From Eternal Take, we had P2 at 70, That Way at 73, Baby Pluto at 74, and Low Main at 87. Well, from Love vs. the World 2, we had Myron at 54, Bean Kobe featuring Chief Keef at 86, and Yes Sir Skill with 21 Savage at 93. Then we had the remnants of the Lil Baby album bomb that still isn't gone, Woe at 42, Grace with 42 Dugg at 85, and Heatin' Up with Gunna at 91, along with some residual slides for Bad Bunny having La Difficile at 100, and Si Vio a Tu Mama at 92. Outside of that, well, we had the continued and expected loss for BS by Jhené Aiko and Her at 76, as well as the fading virality of Suicidal by YNW Melly and Juice WRLD at 35, and Godzilla by Eminem featuring Juice WRLD at 38. And outside of the slow fade for Lose You to Love Me by Selena Gomez at 47, we also saw the bizarre jumps from last week with Homemade by Jake Owen and Oprah's Bank Account by Lil Yachty, Drake, and DaBaby fall back to earth at 50 and 75 respectively. Now, granted, given that many of our returns and gains will likely be what survives the album bombs, I'm not exactly enthused by what we got left. Yes, After Hours by The Weeknd is back at 22, and Homecoming Queen by Kelsea Ballerini rode her album bomb to 65. But was anybody asking for Out West by Jack Boys and Young Thug to come back at 78? Or Into the Unknown by Idina Menzel and Aurora back at 97? Hell, the only reason I think Heartless by Diplo and Morgan Wallen returned at 90 was people mixing up the titles with The Weeknd. Now, speaking of that, in our gains, we already talked about Heartless at number 4, but what shocked me was the amount of success for debuts and continued gains, which, yes, I am happy that Hope You're Happy Now by Carly Pearce and Lee Bryce went up to 64, but seeing it with Slow Dance in a Parking Lot by Jordan Davis at 49, or especially Sunday Best by Surfaces at 62, similar case with our debuts picking up. I Like Does to Me by Luke Combs and Eric Church at 63, and Savage by Megan Thee Stallion getting a huge boost up to 20 thanks to monstrous sales and a lot of streams. But did it have to bring Deathbed by Powfu and Bia Badoobie up to 59, or Super Lonely by Benny and Gus Dapperton at 71, or Beer Can't Fix by Thomas Rhett and John Party at 68? Even some of our returns leave me with questions. Yes, I like Come Through by Summer Walker and Usher at 88, but along with it we got Before You Go by Louis Capaldi at 77. Finally, there's Know Your Worth by Khalid and Disclosure at 82. No further comments other than no expectation it's gonna last. But we do have an album bomb situation for After Hours, so of the songs that are out of the top 40 and neither best nor worst, it gives us Until I Bleed Out at 80, Repeat After Me Interlude at 69, and Save Your Tears at 41. But now onto a surprisingly manageable list of our new arrivals here. Starting off with number 95, The Other Girl by Kelsea Ballerini and Halsey.
Who's the first? Who's the fool? Who's the diamond? Who's the pearl?
I mean, it's the obvious single choice. Look, I get why this song is being pushed. Halsey has had consistent success with You Should Be Sad. Kelsea Ballerini's label wants the obvious crossover. And if they're gonna do it by reimagining Reba McEntire and Linda Davis's Does He Love You with the same morally complicated framing, that is something I could really appreciate. Now, this is not that, what could be, but I do appreciate the attempt here, mostly in sketching both girls and how their attention to most on each other, not really the guy, but not precisely blaming each other either, and the two have good chemistry. Unfortunately, we're stuck with the lumpy bass beat, the faded buzzing effects, and the overmixed percussion that holds back from a decent melody from coming to the forefront, so the entire track winds up really overproduced and sour, with nothing close to a real climax and somehow sounding less country than You Should Be Sad. I mean, it's still good, and I like the fact that they're trying for more storytelling. Want to see more of that in country these days. Let's just hope competent production shows up next time around. Number 94, Walk 'Em Down by Choppa featuring Roddy Ricch.
Take a fuck nigga right off the map, when I hit him with this whole 100 round.
Well, this is one way Choppa can actually get a hit. Granted, I'm not sure what this will have that'll get it there. The percussion is really overmixed off the rubbery beat and the faded acoustics, and Choppa is just still not an interesting presence in all the rote gunplay, especially given how squonky the second half of his hook is. Now, this would be where I would look at the Roddy Ricch verse, and I'm just not all that impressed. The content's not really there, and his jittery melodic flips work when they play off production that flatters some of the kooky weirdness. Whereas here, he's stuck with a thicker beat and just sounds off, and the flubbed rhymes don't help. As it is, not bad per se, but like with most forgettable trap, I don't really see this sticking around next. Number 55, Roses Imanbeck Remix by St. John. Well, about damn time this got here. So, okay, context. The original Roses first dropped in 2016 and wasn't all that good. Going back to it now, it sounds like a Bryson Tiller riff with sharper trap snares, muddier vocals, and a slightly more gothic vibe and some of the swampy flexing. Now, this remix pitches up the vocals, adds a sharper, pulsating electro synth to slightly diminish the trap elements, and it's actually got some sinuous presence to it. I probably like it a little bit more, but also winds up feeling kind of anonymous through this remix. It's not like I Took a Pill in Ibiza, where the remix really recontextualized and improved the original arrangement. arrangement. This is just taking a pretty rote trap/R&B song and turning it into a pretty rote electronic song. It's not bad, but I'm not likely to go back to it. Number 45, Faith by The Weeknd. Honestly, I'm not surprised this song didn't fall within the top 40, but it is the best cut here that's not either of the lead-off singles. Mostly because it tilts more into the atonal gothic darkness that's surprisingly missing from a lot of the songs on the album. Especially with that sharper, pulsating groove courtesy of Alangelo and Metro Boomin, and The Weeknd's flagrant heel turn into the pitch-black darkness that they've been trying to deflect from most of the album. Hell, the loss of faith in the song is actually a pretty solid thematic anchor to that gothic presence, especially with the thicker, lower-end multi-tracking, and careening into the murk right after Heartless and right before the manic searching of Blinding Lights. Yeah, okay, terrific song. And while we're on that subject, number 39, Escape from LA by The Weeknd.
Take me out of LA. Take me out of LA.
The most telling thing about this song is that it's less about the girl than it might seem. The Weeknd might be trying to frame her as that symbol of shallow debauchery that runs rampant through Los Angeles, and the explicit references to Bella Hadid makes the TMI nature kind of obvious, but you could also argue that LA is a creature of temptation in her own right in the symbolism, and that he's still succumbing to her, even down to the end, and that cheats him out of being a better man. I mean, it's pretty potent stuff, which makes me wish that the instrumental was a little bit better. I like the faded warp of the guitars beak in the background, but this is a slow-paced dirge, even with the trap groove coming up and the shuddering into moments of tension. But even into the switch up from elegance into pitch-black failure, I wish the percussion didn't feel as muffled or drained of energy on an already long song, which for the warping vibe for the rest of the track, I mean, it's potent, but it doesn't quite coalesce. Otherwise, yeah, some potent stuff, unlike number 32, Snowchild by The Weeknd. Not gonna lie, The Weeknd making another desaturated coke song where the hi-hat is more prominent than any melody feels a little tiresome, especially when the song doesn't have much in the way of momentum and it then devolves into an extended flex with some questionable lines. The double rhyme of Swayze, the futuristic sex giver Philip K. Dick, and how really disposable it all feels by the end. And yes, I get that's part of the point to make this all seem tedious and played out where even he sounds bored, but there's gotta be a way to make the song actually interesting or sharper while getting to that point. Maybe dialing a little bit back on the auto-tune would have gotten there. But you know what, while we're on the topic of questionable percussion, number 28, Too Late by The Weeknd. Ah, look, the worst song on After Hours. And I'm not even gonna say it's terrible, but between all those flat synths and the incredibly cheap-sounding grainy tap that's clearly pulling from UK Garage and not doing it well, especially with the slurred-over delivery and the influx of vocal filters, it's not pleasant, especially when the content starts feeling increasingly redundant, trying to split the difference between trying to cling on to this girl and then acknowledge that it's too late to salvage everything. And that's before all the air horn cuts in, and you're expected to get hyped to a song that's got no momentum. So yeah, not good. Next, number 25, Hardest to Love by The Weeknd.
You're trying to let me go, yeah, and I can see it, I can see it.
Every synthesizer on this song sounds like it's imported from the soft-focus late 80s and early 90s side of R&B, broken up by the whirring shudder of drum and bass percussion, but when you're sticking with a lot of major chords, it sets a very distinctive vibe that feels more than a little bit saccharine to fit with the rest of the album. And this is the tone for The Weeknd that I frankly find the least interesting. He's trying to be the better man and let her down easy because he's hard to love, and he's still kind of amazed she still wants to be with him. I mean, I'm not going to call it self-serving, it does kind of capture a mood, but it's all coming from his voice, and it's also still a pop side that falls a little bit flat for me, and has even less lyrical personality than usual. But while we're here, number 24, Scared to Live by The Weeknd.
Scared to live again, scared to live again.
And following on a lot of the same timbre, we get a big swelling power ballad where he dumps her for good and tries to tell her not to be scared to love again, even as he tries to spin the relationship with one last desperate bit of positive energy. And yeah, you know what? It's better because it goes bigger and the Weeknd's got the personality to sell it. But again, those synth and keyboard tones are not all that far removed from easy listening from a different era. And the Phil Collins gated drums are not really changing that impression. It's just not as dark or interesting as he used to be. It's not bad, but again, not great either. Next up, number 21, Alone Again by The Weeknd.
Take me down,
The lead-off single from the album, and I'll admit it's also not one of my favorites, mostly because of The Weeknd himself. He slurs through the song as the watery, twinkling cascades. He's clearly trying to imitate the muddy effects of a drug overdose on his mind to set the scene and some of the darkest sides of this hedonistic wallow. But I thought the potency of the best Weeknd songs was striking the balance between the danger of debauchery and the reckless, nihilistic cool. And here the balance spills way too hard into the former category, except then we get these vaguely soothing major key tones of the flattened blare of synths, which tries to tilt for darkness by the end and then never sticks the landing. Just kind of fades out. I don't know, I get why this was trying to start the album like this, but for me, again, doesn't really stick. Not bad, but not good either. And finally, number 16, In Your Eyes by The Weeknd.
inside you, oh inside you, in your eyes.
I'm not at all surprised it's being pushed to the next single. It's got that big saxophone. It's easily the poppiest song in the project. It's about him trying to dance away the pain and want to be with this girl who has also got that similar deep-seated pain in her eyes, but he's not gonna let her define her even despite her lies. And sure, it actually is a really good song as a result. It will be a strong single, but let's not say that it isn't safe or that The Weeknd isn't delivering a pretty rote vocal performance, because there's not a lot of intensity or sharper flair in his singing, or the writing, or the production, or the composition. I mean, it's good, but when he plays it this safe, it is a step away from greatness. At least for me. But yeah, that was our week. Pretty agreeable overall, not really any obvious duds, so if the worst of this week winds up being Too Late with The Weeknd, with Walk 'Em Down by Choppa and Roddy Ricch as the dishonorable mention, I'm not gonna complain. Now for the best, yeah, both are going to The Weeknd here, with Faith as the obvious best of the week, and Escape from LA as the honorable mention. I mean, In Your Eyes is kinda close, but I think the writing is a little bit sharper on that Escape. But next week, you know what, I'm curious. Let's see how much Dua Lipa can penetrate in the fallout. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse.